Hey everyone, we have Spiros here from Kyber. He'll be doing a talk on passive and active market making on chain. Would you mind introducing yourself before you hop into your presentation? And for the audience, can you just confirm in the chat you can hear him?
Yeah, sure. Hello, I'm Spiros Retos. I work for Kyber Network. Is that audible? Okay. Yes. Okay, fine. Okay, so I'm working for Kyber Network, and Kyber Network is an on-chain liquidity protocol. We have been providing liquidity on-chain since early 2018. There are various ways for someone to provide, for Kyber to provide liquidity. One of them is the Federated Price Reserve, which is aimed for market professionals. And I am working there for Kyber. And in this talk, we will explore some of the ways for people to provide liquidity on chain, either teams or simply individuals, and the different attributes, caveats, and specifics of each way. So roughly, what is a market? The market is a place where a buyer and a seller exist, but for price to exist and a fair price to exist, the buyer has to meet the seller and transact on the price. The closer the buyers and the sellers are, the better the market is. So liquidity is a fundamental aspect of a good market. And what liquidity is simply the easiness of entering and exiting a position. So the cost of making a trade. So liquidity is not volume or is not the inventory size. It can be affected by those, but it's a much simpler meaning. It's simply the cost of transacting. So where do market makers come in in the market? The role of the market maker is to provide liquidity. It improves the market and gives liquidity to the takers and takes some risk from the takers, which she has to offset. So on-chain market making is the market making that happens totally on-chain. An on-chain market is a market that all its attributes exist on-chain. So the pricing is on-chain, the matching happens on-chain, and the settlement. All aspects of the trade happen on-chain, thus inheriting some of the good blockchain attributes, such as transparency, for example. There are different market making types and venues. Let's start with the order book market making venues, such as Oasis. This is essentially the order book model as we all know it from the traditional markets, ported on chain. It works well for several years now. It was one of the first. And then there is the Kyber FPR market making type, which is a differentiation of an on-chain order book with some improvements on inventory handling and gas cost for maintaining quotes. And then the truly the revolutionary aspect was the automated or the formula-based market makers. I don't know which is the correct term. We will be using AMM or automated market makers in this talk. Bancor started it, Uniswap followed, Balancer came with some improvements, allowing for a multitude of tokens. Then we have Curve, SushiSwap, and the list goes on. An automated market maker, an automated market making venue is one that price is discovered. Price is found by taking into account the balances and of the assets to be market make and the formula. The main difference in those market making types is that in the automated market makers, the takers define the price. The maker simply provides passively an inventory, and it's waiting for his price to get hit. While in order book and in Kyber FPR, there are the makers which define the prices. This is a fundamental difference and very important in how risk can be managed in those different market making types. So traditionally, components of a market making system are the pricing engine. You have to build something to discover the price of what you are providing liquidity for. You have some real-time data, some real-time analytics. You need to constantly crunch numbers, events to improve your pricing. You have a risk management component. You have the trading engine, which helps you offset some of the trades. And then you have your monitoring, your oversight, some control features. And generally, we can say that building a marketing system and building it well is not an easy task. It's not something that a simple person can do. While with the AMM types, the components are needed are far lesser. You just need your wallet to participate in the pool, and that's that. Though this simplicity in providing a market does not come without caveats, and one should know how to be aware of the risk and how to improve the returns or guarantee returns from a market-making system. So, can you consider someone that passively pulls liquidity as a market maker? For me, the answer is definitely. The complexity, how complex or how profitable even a system is, should not be taken into account when accounting when saying if someone is a market maker or not. If you provide liquidity in any way, yes, you are doing good to the market. So, how does a market maker make profit? So, essentially, the market maker starts with a balance in at least two assets because he will market making one asset versus the other. There are some exceptions which we'll not cover now. So your trading activity should result in your balance being greater than the one you started with. You have at least two assets. You had 10 from one and 11 from each other. You should have 11 from one and 12 from each other. It's as simple as that. Your trading activity should decrease your balance. If you have more than in one and less than the other, if you convert them to compare them with the original, your balance should be increasing by your trading actions. As simple as that. Of course, there are some other incentives, such as some rebates mechanisms traditionally that you might have with the exchange, or in terms of the AMM, some liquidity minting incentives, where by providing liquidity, you are being rewarded with another asset that asset to account for profit. So what are the risks when you are providing liquidity? So it's asset dependent. Some more complex assets like options have different attributes. are more, let's say, multidimensional, while on this topic, we will focus on the simple assets, which are, let's say, a token, which are more like single dimensional. They have their price. So a market maker has to cover for delta, and delta is essentially the change of price for the underlying. So market maker should hedge for delta. How risk is perceived now in automated market makers? Delta hedging is not a vast known. It's not looked as deep as it should be. We have the term impermanent loss, which might imply that the loss is not permanent, which I think might be sometimes a bit misleading in terms for people approaching it from a risk perspective. So what essentially is impermanent loss, which is a term for inventory loss for the automated pool participant, it's if your balance is smaller than one that you started with, this loss is called impermanent. How risk can be mitigating? How risk can be mitigated in a non-AMM model? You have a better control of the trades because, as we said before, the price that the users transacted with you, it was a price that you set. So that price, that trade can be offset. The delta of the trade can be offset. So, for example, if user can buy from you at 400 and you can buy yourself at 399, you have no exposure and you even have 1 unit of profit. It's relatively simple as a meaning and as a way to do it. How to hedge for delta in an AMM model is a bit more complex, and we will be staying on this screen for a little, because in an AMM model, you did not choose the price to transact with. So you cannot cover individual trades because of the nature of the AMM model. Most of the time you will be hit, you will be taken, your price, people will transact to you with a bad for you price. So most of the times you will not be able to hedge that price. This is by nature. So what you can do, and this is like a real life study that I did a couple of weeks ago. So what you can do essentially is, let's take this example. Say you want to market make in Uniswap for the ETH to DAI pool, and current price is 380. You can either cover your exposure and impermanent loss for up to ETH going to 1,000 or ETH going to $1. But this would increase your costs a lot, and this doesn't really make much sense, and your hedging would be super expensive. It wouldn't even worth it. So what you could do is find some bounds to the price. Say you pick a lower and an upper bound to the price that you think the price will be range bound in between, and you buy an option amount to cover your impermanent loss, assuming one of those two bounds were hit. Roughly for the bounds of 250 and 550, when the price was 380, the cost for covering for impermanent loss for 2 months period, because you were buying 2 months option, was 3.5% of the total of your total inventory, which is roughly 21% annualized. So this is a costly hedging. It costs you 21% to hedge for the impermanent loss. Now that you are hedged, assuming price is range bound, you hope for the accumulated fees to be in the 3.5, in the 21% annualized range, which truly depends on the volume and on the volatility. You never know. What can change this is if you have a token incentive. So, and again, in the case of Uniswap, and as we see in the chart, we see the flat line before the end of August when SushiSwap was introduced. No, Sushi, the token, SushiSwap was later. So we see that both times, first when Sushi was introduced and then when Uni was introduced, we saw a very big spike in the liquidity there by the market makers. So those people either they were essentially making more money, so they could use that money as an additional income. Or they could use it to hedge their position, guarantee a profit, and improve their trade instead of just staying naked and metaphorically meaning unhedged in the pool. It's very hard to make money in an AMM pool if you don't have token incentives, because all your trades are bad, most of them, and every trade causes impermanent loss with comparison to the previous trade. So instead of hoping that the price will mean revert to your entry price and that there will be enough fees, you can cover yourself and making a trade that has better possibilities for you. So token incentives help a lot and can make some trades or some decisions being skewed to the positive side. So, for example, it costs you 21% to hedge with options for 2 months, and with current Uni price, only the Uni token returns from the pool were 21%, again, like 20%. So the Uni returns were enough to cover for your hedging, plus the additional fees that you would have from the volatility, and the possibility for the price to touch your ranges is pretty small. So all in all, it's a pretty decent trade. The token incentive helps a lot. There are, though, some cases from a risk perspective that are good for an AMM, and even without token incentives, a participant can make money. So, because by definition, you want the price to be closer to the price, your exit in the pool price to be very close to your entry to the pool price, and volume to exist in between for fees to be accumulated. The very high correlated assets help in that. So, for example, if you provide liquidity in a WBTC to Rent BTC pool, or in a USDC to USDT to DAI pool, those assets are very close in price. So it can be, or ETH to a synthetic ETH. So you can make profit just from the fees in that case. Also, if you are a token team and you want to provide liquidity for your own token, participating in an AMM also makes sense, because even though you might not always be profitable, there are the business effects or the from your token being liquid. So to recap, these highly correlated assets can make you money if you are an AMM participant. If you are not an AMM participant, the only thing that you need is liquid assets with enough demand. You want them to be liquid for you to be able to hedge fast, and enough demand for you to have a turnover. So the returns that you can have from market making on chain, from an AMM model and comparing to the inventory side, they are usually token incentives aside, and taking some of the logical, let's say, pairs like stable to ETH, they are in the single digits yearly, and they are not necessarily positive. You can very easily lose money. Token incentives can help a lot. While if we compare them to a professional market making setup like the Kyber FPR, for our reserve ranged a bit less than 0.35% per volume traded in 2019, and it's more than 0.2% profit per volume in 2020. We had increased gas costs that affected in our operations, and the APIs are more than 100%. So yes, we can't really compare the returns because by nature the professional venue will be run by professional market makers, and will have a higher return. Some of the intricacies of providing liquidity professionally on chain is the tech that someone has to interact with a blockchain, and some minor smart contract knowledge, gas costs for on-chain operation, and the market maker has variable reaction times. So assuming he wants to act now on a price, change it, this change can be in 30 seconds or in 2 minutes. It depends on the blockchain times. The on-chain market maker, professional market maker, might also have some toxic flows like arbitrageurs that might result in some trades not being optimal. But on the other side, there is an access to a vast pool of market participants that execute with market orders and often prioritize speed over execution. The profit margins are per volume are much higher than in off-chain volume, so you need far lesser volume to achieve profitability. And the on-chain market making and the on-chain volumes are constantly increasing. A few words about Kyber FPR. Kyber Federated Price Reserve is a type of liquidity provider in a Kyber network that is addressed to professional market makers and teams. It's an enhanced version of the order book model, offering some control over your codes, various different aspects, and it also is very efficient in utilizing your inventory. You can utilize your inventory not only on Kyber, but in other venues. Your inventory is not committed like it would be if it were part of an order book. It's very optimized for gas efficiency, for making price for a multitude of tokens. This does not work at 500 gigawatt though. And also it has a feature set for assessing parameters and changing parameters to comply with the on-chain intricacies. We offer an SDK for anyone that wants to try. Any team that wants to try, they can easily get onboarding. We have an easy SDK and full support from our team for them to get onboarded. You can check it out at developer.kyber.network. Go to the Kyber Pro tab, and let's say that the conclusions from this talk are that usually so far people in the AMM did not have a good understanding of risk. Token incentives can make them better understand the risk, can make them be even profitable and take more informed decisions. You don't have to be you don't have to be a degen and YOLO your funds to end pool and expect for the best. Besides hope and conviction, you can use your logic and some maths to make money, because token incentives help you make money if you want to passively combine, passively put liquidity somewhere. And if you are a professional market maker, there is a very big pie, and Kyber Network offers you a lot of tools to provide liquidity with on-chain. You can find us on Twitter at Kyber Network and on Telegram at Kyber Network. We have 5 minutes for questions now.
Cool. So if you guys have questions, drop in the chat or in the ask a question section at the left. I guess, Spiros, when people do talk to you, what are some very common questions that you get or misconceptions about Kyber that you would just like to clarify?
There aren't really many misconceptions, because when I talk with people, we mostly talk with professional market makers that want to pull liquidity. For liquidity mining, it's not easy to change the token model for many reasons: legal reasons, compliance reasons, and we already have a token that has a utility. We do plan of having an enhanced AMM, and we are going to have another formula based market maker like we do now. I see a question for the DeFi ecosystem to have professional market makers. Yes, I think it is important, because there are many operations that happen in the DeFi ecosystem that need to be taken into account seriously. For example, you might have liquidations from MakerDAO or from another lending protocol that if those liquidations don't happen, then the protocol might be not performing as it should be. And professional or not doesn't really make a difference, because both professionals and non-professionals are in there for profit, right? It's just that if someone puts enough effort to it, it can do it more effectively, and you can jump from non-professional to professional just by giving it more time.
Cool. Do you have any last words, or are we good?
No, thanks a lot for listening to me on a Saturday.
Thanks for speaking on a Saturday. All right. Well, thanks so much. Take care.